Hello, everybody. Hope you are all doing well. Hope everybody is awesome. We are getting ready to start the reading stream. We're going to be picking up with the Night Angel. We're going to be on chapter 11, and we're going to try to get through chapter 20 tonight. We're going to try to go through 9 or 10 chapters tonight. Really excited. Very excited to continue the story. Like I said, for those of you who are not familiar, I'm doing a new process by which I do my reading streams. I am not just reading random stories. I am picking one story, reading it all the way through, and then moving on to a new one. And we will be labeling the chapters we read through, so that way people who are lost or don't know, or come into the stream late, or who are just watching this stream for the first time but didn't see the last one, they can very easily know where to go to pick up where they left off, or pick up at the very beginning of the story. Now, I'm going to go ahead and remind you guys again, Night Angel is one of my first stories that I ever wrote. Very, very old. Started this years ago. And it is also the first story I ever wrote that stars a female protagonist. So it was a very experimental story, but people have said that they have been enjoying it. So very excited to continue it, excited to keep reading it. So yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's get ready to get started. Hold on one second. Oh, okay, that's not important. All right, awesome. I'm doing okay. Lopacula, I'm doing okay. Oh, reminder for everybody, since we're on the topic. I do check chat. A quick reminder for everyone here. This is not a gaming stream. We're not here to talk about games. We're not here to talk about response videos. We're not here to talk about For Honor, Dead by Daylight, Space Marine 2, any of that. We're not here to talk about that stuff. We're here for stories and stories alone. If you start talking games or start saying, hey, you want to play For Honor or anything like that, I'll go ahead and give you a timeout, because I don't want to be distracted by that. Okay? All right, so let's get started. Let me pull up the story real quick. Chapter 11. Here we are. And if you guys don't remember what happened in the last few chapters, check out the original stream, the first stream of The Night Angel, and get yourself all caught up. Anyway, here we go. The Night Angel, Chapter 11, written May 21st, 2014. Yuri and I drove for a long while. The night sky fueled us and the moon acted as a guide. I stayed close behind his car, dodging and weaving through the traffic until, at long last, Yuri turned off the interstate and onto a nearly abandoned road leading through a large, dense forest. The road winded this way and that like a long snake. I kept having to slow down to stay behind Yuri and not drive right past him. But why'd he taken us this way? We couldn't be there already. But after an hour, I looked ahead of us to see a fork in the road. One led north, and the other looked like it went deeper into the forest. To my amazement, Yuri stopped the car on the side of the road. I pulled my bike over and climbed off. When Yuri stepped out, I marched towards him. "What's the problem?" I asked. "We are being followed," Yuri answered. I raised an eyebrow to this. I hadn't seen anyone following us after we got off the interstate. "What makes you say that?" I asked him. How do you think we've constantly been found?" he asked. "They haven't revealed themselves yet. But I assure you that someone's been tailing us. How did that troll find us, do you wonder? What about that leprechaun? It can't all have been coincidence. Someone knows how to track us and is doing so with great efficiency." While Yuri explained this, I began to consider the possibility he was presenting. It was a bit suspicious how we'd been discovered so easily and repeatedly. But how are they doing it? I wondered. Yuri sighed and shook his head. "I think it may be because of me," he said sadly. "Vampires often keep close tabs on each other to ensure pack survival. We recognize the smell of other vampires. I think that perhaps we have a pack of keeping tabs on me. And therefore you. I've put you in danger by being near you." "And don't be ridiculous," I snapped. "Look, even if they are keeping tabs on you, it's something you can't control. We'll just fight them off."
"I wish it was that simple," Yuri growled. "I hate to admit it, Rebecca. I am no warrior. Were we in a true life or death situation, I would be of little use to you. My strength and speed may be that of vampiric, but my fighting skills are practically meaningless. I was always taken care of by my sympathetic monster hunters who knew my story and took pity on me. And believe me when I say that there were very few in number who would reach out to a vampire like me." I groaned and leaned on my motorcycle and rubbed my temples, trying to relieve the stress. It wasn't helping. "All right, then, what do you propose we do then?" I asked. "I suggest we part ways here," Yuri said. I will take the north road, which is a direct path to where I was going to meet Thomas. However, you will take the other road. I've already called Joshua Rains and told him about this change. He'll meet you in the new location.
Wait, I'm sorry, you're leaving? I asked. I was surprised by the sadness I felt at seeing him leave. I hadn't known him long, but he had been helpful in his own way. And he was a friend of Mom and Dad's.
I am sorry, Rebecca, he said.
He looked truly sad as well.
I wish that I could have seen this through to the end with you. It is my own fault for not being strong enough to protect you as your father hoped I might.
No, don't talk like that, Yuri, Rebecca muttered sheepishly. You did well.
Your words are kind, even if they are untrue.
Yuri bowed a little and then smiled warmly, his fangs showing in the light of the moon.
You really are just like your father, you know that.
Yuri turned and began walking to his car. I found myself taking a few steps after him. Yuri, will I see you again? I asked.
God willing.
Tell me the truth, Yuri. Yuri paused a moment and shook his head.
No, I do not believe our paths will cross again, Rebecca.
I felt a twinge of regret at this. For most of the time we'd been together, I'd done nothing but insult him and avoid him. But now I felt genuinely upset at seeing him leave. I'd grown a little attached.
If we do meet again, think kindly of me.
He opened the door to his car and put a foot in before stopping and looking back at me. He stepped out and walked towards me once more. I braced myself for a tearful farewell, but what stuck out was a hand. He wanted me to take it. I hesitantly shook his hand and smiled. You're not bad, Yuri. For a bloodsucker, I joked. He laughed and released my hand.
I'll take that as a compliment from you, Night Angel.
He stepped back and shook his head.
You take care of yourself, Rebecca Anderson.
He then hurried to his car and climbed in before emotion overtook us both. You too, Yuri. With that, I watched as Yuri drove off into the distance, leaving me far behind. I climbed on my bike and silently wished upon the night above that Yuri and I would see each other again. I kicked off and away and flew into the night. I rode for a few hours. My eyes were heavy and I was beginning to feel the weight of solitude. It was a strange feeling and one that I was not accustomed to. I'd gone on many hunts by myself in the night and not once ever felt so alone as I did now. Maybe it was because I didn't fully know where I was going, didn't have anyone to rely on now. My father and now Yuri were both gone, and I would not see them again for a long time, if ever. Now I was driving off to go find a person that I'd never met before that would be able to answer the questions that pounded like drums within my heart. Why did I feel so betrayed suddenly? I shook off the doubts and hit the throttle harder. I looked off beyond the trees, and then I slowed down, seeing what looked like a red glow, like a fire. There was something on fire in that direction. I slowed down and tried to see what it was, when suddenly I gasped. The thing on fire was a barn. An entire barn was on fire. I stopped my bike and watched it burn. Why were there no farmers trying to control the burn? Where was a fire department to put it out? Why was it getting out of control and reaching out to the wheat fields? Then, I saw a lone figure standing in front of it. He was just standing there. He didn't move or make an attempt to fight the inferno, but he just watched it, as if it were a bonfire meant to be enjoyed. "Hey!" I roared to him. "Do you need any help?" The man slowly turned his head to face me, and I felt my blood run cold. His eyes were blood red and practically glowing. It felt like I was staring at the devil himself, and from the sadistic grin on his face, maybe that's exactly what I was staring at.
"Greetings, Night Angel," he snickered.
His voice was raspy and venomous. Though he spoke with elegance, there was a definite malice in his words.
"Do you like my bonfire?"
I stared at him and then to the barn and shook my head. He looked disappointed.
"Oh, not impressed. I can understand that. It's not my best work, but I had to do what I could with what I had. After all, this barn only had 7 farmhands available to burn, and it's hard to make decent art from such low-standard material."
I felt myself going dead inside at the calm and relaxed way he spoke about this. Inside that barn, he had killed and burned 7 men and caused a fire of this magnitude from their corpses.
I felt myself shivering. What? How dare you? Why? I screamed like a child. The man threw back his head at this and laughed. It was a terrifying sound, like a dog barking, but in the most wretched and blood-curdling way possible. His face seemed almost to distort, becoming something so inhuman and yet familiar. And in that instant, it was gone again. Why? You want to know why? Again, he burst out laughing. You poor thing. He turned and there was a look of artistic venom in his gaze that made me shrink back. It's cute, the naivety. You'll learn, my dear, that there are some creatures in this world for whom means don't need an end. There is no why. There is no reason. I do what I do because chaos and destruction does not require reason. His words were nightmarish. I felt an urge to run. I wanted to escape. I had to get away from this thing, but my feet were rooted to the ground. Who are you? I whimpered. Suddenly a thought occurred to my mind. Are you S? Once again, my question was met with that terrifying burst of laughter that mimicked the barking of wild dogs. I felt a horrible sense of fear as I heard this man. No, this wasn't a man. This was a thing, a monster, and I had no idea what to do to fight it. Even the thought of opposing it felt ludicrous to me. All these questions. But I'm afraid our time is up. I must leave now, Night Angel. I do not have time to play with you right now. Maybe we'll have a chance to play a few rounds in the future. Oh, yes. I look forward to that. There's much that needs doing. I merely wish to see what kind of threat the terrifying Night Angel posed. But to be honest, I'm not all that impressed. Well, stick around and maybe I'll surprise you! I climbed off my bike and pulled my gun to fire. It was a wild card, but I had to try anything at this point. I fired the gun and the bullet struck the beast right between the eyes. With a grunt, he fell over on his back. I stood dumbfounded and breathing slowly. Had I killed him? Was he dead? That was... I'll admit, that stung. Was that a silver bullet? I spun around just in time to see the man standing exactly behind me. I let out a shriek. I glanced but from him into the body, only to see that the body I just shot had vanished. My bullet had been completely useless. A silver bullet did nothing to this thing. Even a vampire would have died from such a shot. What on earth was he? And I voiced this question. What are you? I gasped, fear gripping my throat. The beast smiled, showing that animalistic bloodlust that made me tremble. Names. Humans have called me many names over the millennia. If I had to pick one for you, my dear, you may call me Set. I stumbled back in fear as he came ever closer to me, his rancid breath filling my lungs and making me go dizzy. His fangs were bared and his eyes were menacing. Are you going to kill you? What fun would that be? No. I'll let you live. You'll make for great entertainment in the future. He stepped away and turned to march back to the barn. Every fiber of my being told me to flee. I had to get away as fast as possible. There was nothing left to do. One more thing, my dear, he called out. Your vampire friend, Yuri, is being dealt with as we speak. When his former pack is done with him, they'll be coming after you next. He smiled with a satisfied wink and walked away. I suggest you start running, little angel. At his words, my fear briefly turned to hatred. You bastard! Leave Yuri alone! Oh, you have spirit. I like that. You hold on to it. I do believe that you'll make for some good fun yet, Night Angel. But first, you have to run. Run away, little angel. Run fast. I glared at him, but knew that it was best to flee before I was destroyed. I didn't have the knowledge or skills to kill this thing.
and I had to run away. I leapt on my bike and flew off as fast as I could from the barn, but I could still hear his deranged chanting in my head, his awful laugh. No matter how far I drove, it pounded in my head, bringing tears to my eyes and pain in my heart. I could hear his voice. Run, 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 little angel. Go try to flee. Please, keep making this entertaining for me. And then his little chant was followed by that terrible, terrifying laugh that filled the night sky with ruthless, unquestioning insanity. Chapter 12. I drove for hours, but no matter how far I went, I couldn't get his laugh out of my head. The mysterious S had revealed himself to me, and I'd never encountered anything like him before. Sure, I'd seen monsters, but this creature was beyond even that classification. A beast that could frighten vampires and would set fire to barns full of innocent humans, laughing without a thought about it. But why had he let me go? Was he just toying with me? Probably. That guy is way out of my league, I said to myself. I don't have a prayer against that kind of power. I need to know what he's up to, what I'm up against, and what on earth I can do about it. I suddenly heard the engine begin to make a putter. The gas was dangerously low, and I needed a refill. I also realized just how hungry I was. It had been so long since I last ate, and the terror I felt at meeting that S character, it made me forget all about needing food. I looked up the road and saw a gas station and drove up to it. I climbed off the bike and began fueling it when I began looking to see if there was a restaurant attached to the station. I smiled upon realizing that there was indeed a sandwich shop there. Breathing a sigh of relief, I waited until my bike was done and then wheeled it to park next to the shop. Though my stomach was growling loudly, it was drowned out by the sound of my own thoughts and fears. I couldn't shake this feeling that Yuri and I would never meet again. And then there was this mysterious Joshua Raines that I was supposed to be looking for. How was I supposed to find him? Heck, even if I could find him, how the hell was he going to help me at all? I was putting all my faith into one person who I didn't even know. I was clearly out of my mind. But that could wait. I hurried inside and got in line to order a sandwich. The lady behind the counter looked sleepy, and no surprise, considering it was about 3 or 4 in the morning. "Can I help you, ma'am?" she asked. "Yes, I'd like, I stared at the menu, unsure of what I wanted. Everything looked tasty, and my hunger couldn't help me decide. Plus, my mind was all befuddled. "Ma'am, I have other customers who need to order if you need more time to decide." I looked behind me, and sure enough, there was a man in a coat standing behind me with a little girl holding his hand. He glanced at me with deep blue eyes and nodded his head wordlessly. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said beside. "It's all right," the man answered. Then he walked up and around me to the front while I continued to stare at the menu. As I looked at it, a thought began to cross my mind. I hadn't heard that man or girl walk in. How had he totally avoided my detection? Normally, especially at night, my senses were above keen. This person had totally avoided my notice. Was he a spy? No. There was something else about his eyes that told me this person wasn't entirely normal. Was he a vampire in disguise? Was he a mindless puppet being controlled by the girl? Maybe he was some kind of demon. I kept my eyes trained on the man the whole time, looking for any sign of danger, any clue that he could be a monster. I then shook my head. "You idiot," I growled to myself. "You're jumping at shadows now. He's no monster. You're just spooked by that whole barn thing." I stepped forward, ordered a turkey sub, and ignored the man and that girl as they went to sit and eat. My whole body felt like it was on high alert, searching every part of my surroundings for a suspected enemy or beast. The lady went to work preparing my sandwich, and then handed it over to me as I made my way to the register. "See? No trouble," I assured myself quietly. "Hell, for all you know, this sandwich could be a monster you have to kill," I laughed, trying to make light of the situation. "There's nothing to be scared of. Nothing's about to jump out and get you." "Hey!" Ah! I looked up, startled by this sudden noise, and saw that the lady behind the counter was staring at me with frustration. "Ma'am, that'll be $8.45, please." "Oh, right. Sorry." I mumbled in embarrassment. I picked up the sandwich and sat down on the other side of the shop to eat. As I bit into the meat, I felt a tightness in my throat build up. "I really am losing it, aren't I?" I whimpered. I slowly sat down to eat the half-eaten sandwich and buried my face in my hands. "What is wrong with you, Rebecca?" I cried. "You've never let anything get you this worked up. You're practically shivering." I knew why, though. I knew what had shaken me up. I had never felt this much fear before. I'd never encountered a force like I'd felt when I was face to face with Set. It had rocked me to my core.
Excuse me, but are you okay?
I looked up and saw that the man was standing there, the little girl holding his hand. Sorry, yes, I'm fine.
You don't look well, he said. Should I call 911 for you, or is there someone I can get in touch with?
I said I'm okay, sir, I snapped.
Well, at the very least, allow me to drive you to where you need to go. It's awful late for someone your age to be traveling, he said.
Sir, my father wouldn't be very fond of me accepting charity and rides from strangers, so with all due respect, please leave me alone.
Well, how about if
now? I snarled, glaring up at the man. As I looked at him, I suddenly paused and saw that his blue eyes flashed red for a moment. It was the briefest thing. I would have missed it had I not looked up as soon as I had. Was I just imagining it? Or had his eyes really turned red there?
As you wish, he said.
He then took his little girl's hand and led her out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting in absolute shock at his actions. Why did he take an interest in me, and why did his eyes flash red? I know I hadn't imagined it. Those were classic vampire reactions. Vampires tended to target young adults and teens who are by themselves and then lull them into a sense of security. And then they lure them to a secluded location and feed from them. My resistance must have angered him and caused his eyes to flash. Might want to know where he's going, I whispered. I finished the sandwich and hurried out of the sandwich shop to go and follow him. I saw him and the girl walking to a car parked at the other end of the station. I turned to grab my bike. It was my only way to follow him. However, my bike was not exactly as I left it, because there were no less than 4 young men standing around it smirking and smiling at it. Hey, get away from my bike, I shouted.
One of the boys turned and smiled. Oh, this yours? Yes. Sweet ride.
Yeah, it's mine, and I told you to get away from it, I barked. Laughing, the boy who had spoken climbed on the bike and began fiddling with it.
Oh, come on. Let us take this baby for a spin.
No, I snarled, transforming and shoving him off the bike.
Okay, cool off, the boy cackled. Okay, if we can't take your bike for a spin, how about you?
The guys slowly drew their attention away from the bike and began to move a bit closer. It was in that instant that I began to smell a rank stench coming from them. Go soak your heads, I growled, climbing on the bike. Not interested.
Ah, but I am.
The boy suddenly grabbed my wrist and pulled me off the bike with remarkable ease. I'd never felt any man have this kind of physical strength before. Get off me, I snarled, ripping his wrist away.
Calm down.
Who's gonna come and save you? The guy asked. We're in the middle of nowhere, kid, and the sun is only about an hour from coming up. So let's just get this over with. The sun? Well, he was right about the sun coming up, but how had he known that? Most drunkards didn't know how to find their own watches, let alone tell what time the sun would rise. And it was then that I could tell that the smell that I was smelling wasn't alcohol. It was blood. You're not human, I whispered. The boys grinned, and I noticed the fangs. Vampires, I growled. Good guess. It was that man earlier, wasn't it? He was leading me to you, wasn't he? I snarled, now fully recognizing the strategy.
Don't know what you're talking about.
The leader of the boys marched forward and grabbed my arm, yanking me towards him. Now shut up and hold still. I'm starving. I used all my strength to shove him away, but it was no good. The vampire's power was too great. Even if I could get him off of me, my weapons were all in my bag attached to the motorcycle. I was defenseless. Damn you, blood-sucking! If you behave, I might just let you become one of us. How do you like to be part of the gang? The vampire hissed in my ear. I snarled and spit in his face.
Fine, have it your way.
I clenched up, waiting for the bite, waiting to feel fangs sink into my neck. But instead, I heard a blood-curdling scream. I opened my eyes to see the vampire in the back on the ground, clutching his chest, where a large burn was appearing. It was searing its way through his body until his whole gut was nothing but ashes. Finally, he stopped screaming and lay dead. What the hell was that? The lead vampire who had been holding me suddenly screamed in agony and collapsed to the ground, his arm burning to ashes just like his comrades.
Get back, kid.
I felt a hand grab me and shove me away. I looked up to see the man from earlier in his black coat walking forward. In his hand was a bottle of water and a knife. He didn't look the least bit concerned or scared of these vampires. He walked with the kind of stride that a man with absolute power and authority would have. The surviving vampires looked at the man in shock and growled, hissing like animals. The hell did you just do?
Holy water, the man said, showing the bottle.
He splashed them in their direction, and both of them leapt away in terror.
What's the matter, boys? Scared of getting wet?
Damn you to hell! The vampire hissed and screeched, struggling to maintain their composure.
We'll kill you!
Well, don't let me stop you. Come and get me, the man said. He stood perfectly still, unafraid and unwavering. His confidence was astounding. The two vampires, which had looked ready to kill a second ago, now were backing away like scared dogs.
He's a hunter! Let's get the hell out of here! They turned and ran as fast as they could in the other direction.
A vampire at its top speed could reach around 50 to 60 miles per hour, so I knew there was no way we could catch them. The man simply pulled out a pistol from his coat and aimed it where they were running. Ashes to ashes, he fired the pistol. There was the sound of a scream, and a burst of flame appeared near the parking lot exit as one of the vampires fell to the ground, a smoldering pile of limbs and flames. Dust to dust. He fired again, and the second vampire, which had slowed down to see his comrade, now too collapsed. His face twisted in agony as his body decayed into ash. I could only stare at the scene in amazement. Vampires were classified among the most dangerous monsters in existence. They were stronger, faster, and more durable than humans. And they were beyond cunning. A hunter taking down a single vampire was unbelievably difficult, but this man, this stranger, he'd taken down 4 vampires without flinching. What was he? And how had he done it? He turned to look at me, a slight hint of annoyance on his face.
"You're that same girl from the sandwich shop," he said.
"Oh, yeah, sorry about that."
"You're lucky that I hadn't left yet," he growled. "Didn't your parents ever tell you to stay away from strangers like those boys?"
"How did you know I was in danger?" I asked.
"You shouted that they were vampires. For that matter, how did you even know what they were?" he asked curiously.
I blinked, confused by the question. I then realized he didn't know I was a hunter. I stood up and held out my hand. "Oh, sorry, I should better introduce myself. I'm Rebecca Anderson. I'm a hunter."
At the mention of my name, his eyes went wide. "Your name is Anderson?" he asked.
"Yes, why?"
"Where's Yuri?" he demanded.
"Yuri? How did he know about Yuri?" "He's gone," I answered.
"Damn it! They must have got him. I'll have to deal with that later, though. Come with me," he said.
He held out his hand for me to take it, but I only moved away from it. "Didn't you just tell me not to go near strangers?" I mockingly remarked.
The man spat on the ground and rolled his eyes. "Damn it, kid, you're so much like your dad, it hurts. Same smart-ass remarks."
My dad? You know my dad?"
"Yeah, I know, Jonah. He's the one that called me to pick you up."
The man finally pulled back his hooded coat so I could see a better look at his face. He was surprisingly younger than I expected. There was a bit of stubble on his chin, and his hair was a dark color. Not quite black, but very close, almost raven-colored. He looked ruggedly handsome, and his eyes, though currently blue, looked very mysteriously cloudy, almost as like they masked something behind their shade. This man wasn't quite human, but I couldn't tell if he was a threat to me. What he was exactly, that was what I needed to find out.
"Name's Joshua Raines. Glad to meet you."
Chapter 13. "You're who?" I cried in shock. He didn't answer, but looked around as if he was expecting more vampires, or something worse, to come out. "Are you really him?"
"Yeah. Name's Joshua. Now we need to move. Where's your car?" he demanded.
"I came on this motorcycle, but before we go, I have questions. You need to—"
"No time," Joshua barked. "Kirai, buckle up, kiddo. We're heading to base."
The little girl from earlier nodded and dashed for the convertible not far away. He then turned back to me and shoved me toward the motorcycle.
"Get on and follow us, understand?"
"Yes, but what about—"
"We'll have time for that later. For now, get your ass on the bike and let's go. If you're here, then that means the Blood Brothers aren't far behind."
"The who?"
"Vampire gang. We've been on their tail for the past few days. They were using Yuri to follow you, but by now, they're probably caught on the trick and are coming for you. We need to get back to base before they find us."
"Wait, I need to—"
"Listen, I will explain everything later, but please, I am begging you, shut up and get on the bike," Joshua snapped before turning and leaping into his car.
I grumbled and climbed on my bike and fired the engine. My first impression of the infamous Joshua Raines was not a good one. While he did save my life, he was pushy. But then again, if he was right and a whole gang of vampires was on our tail, he had every reason to be pushy. I didn't want any more vampires tonight. I climbed on the bike and turned it around just in time to see him driving for the main highway. I kicked the throttle and roared after him. We drove for about 30 minutes. I was exhausted. The sun was going to be coming up soon, and I hadn't heard a word about the Blood Brothers or about Set. How much did Joshua know? Yuri said Joshua was the one who could tell me what a night angel was, but how did he know? Was he really that fantastic of a hunter? At long last, we pulled into a hotel on the side of the highway, and Joshua climbed out. I parked next to him and ran to his side. He was holding Kirai's hand. The little girl looked sleepy. She kept rubbing her eyes and leaning her head against Joshua. Was she his daughter?
"We'll stay here for the day," Joshua said.
"But why not travel in the daylight?" I asked. "The vampires can't follow us during the day."
Joshua then looked down at Kirai. "She can't travel in the daylight either," Joshua said.
"She can't?" I raised an eyebrow curiously, and Joshua knelt down and took the hood off of Kirai's head. I then saw her silver hair and her beautiful red eyes, and it was in that moment I recognized her for what she was. Wait, she's a vampire too? Kirai blinked for a moment and looked up at me with her big, sleepy eyes, as if she were trying to figure me out, but her face was converged with exhaustion, and she soon moaned and leaned against Joshua once more. Joshua put his hand on her head and stroked it affectionately. Yes, she is. Now, if you're done panicking, can we go check in? He took Kirai's hand and led her inside. I followed him, but my eyes never left Kirai. Was she like Yuri, an innocent victim of a vampire bite? No, her silver hair was an indicator that she was pureblood. She came from a family of vampires. But why would Joshua trust her? Why was she so tame and, admittedly, so cute? She didn't even appear to be threatening. Joshua checked us into a room on the 3rd floor, and we silently climbed up to the 3rd level. Joshua unlocked the door and led us inside. Wait in the living room. I'm going to go put Kirai to bed. Joshua walked to the bedroom, and I heard him lay her down on a bed and tuck her in. I sat in the living room, tapping my foot, impatiently. I was finally on the verge of getting the answers I so desperately wanted. Joshua finally came walking back into the living room. He tossed his bag in a seat and plopped down in an armchair, sighing as he did. All right, now that we're safe in a hotel, we can speak more comfortably. Like I said, my name's Joshua Raines, and I guess I'm the one you've been looking for, he said. I'm Rebecca Anderson, I replied stiffly. Now please, I think I deserve some goddamn answers. Joshua nodded and pulled a can of soda from his bag. He began to sip it and let out a short burp. Very well. Ask your questions, and I'll try to answer them as best I can, he said. Okay, what the hell is going on? I barked. Joshua sipped the soda again and sighed. That's a good question. I'm trying to figure that out myself. And it would help if I knew who or what was after you, Joshua said. I then remembered that night. The barn on fire. The monster. Set, I answered. Joshua, whose mouth had been pressed against the soda can, suddenly coughed and nearly spit the soda from his mouth. What did you say? Joshua hissed. I said set, I answered. Joshua leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide, and to my horror, terrified. He acted like he just heard the worst news of his life. That's impossible. It can't be him, Joshua growled. Who is he? What is he? What is he? Only the most sadistic and twisted creature to ever darken this world. He's a pagan god of Egyptian origin. In Egyptian mythology, Set is the pagan god of chaos and destruction. A god? Stop joking. Come on, there's only one god. Yes, there's only one god, but there are certain beings out there with power. Power that makes others consider them to be gods. Spirits, entities of immense strength throughout history. Worshipped by people who didn't know any better. And this is one of them. We're dealing with such a creature. And worse yet, this is a creature who specializes in destruction, madness, and sadism. If he's causing trouble, this could be bigger than anything this world has seen in literal centuries. Joshua explained, fear in the back of his words. I didn't know it could be that bad, I admitted. Look, I don't know what's brought Set out to play, but we can't afford to be passive with this. We need to find out what he wants and find out fast, he explained. Wait, I still have more questions, I argued. Joshua looked up at me as if he was just now remembering that I was even there. Had he been talking to himself this whole time? He nodded and leaned back, calming down. Right. Of course, sure. Ask away. What happened to Yuri? I asked. He said he and I got separated some time ago, and Set said that he would be dealt with by his own kind. Yuri is... Joshua muttered. Look, Rebecca, you need to understand. Vampires keep close tabs on each other. They act like a unit or a pack. Yuri betrayed them by going to you and saving your life. And when the Blood Brothers learned of his treachery, they began hunting you through him. He decided he would throw them off your trail by separating from you. And it was a good plan, but if Set is controlling the Blood Brothers, he's probably already figured out where Yuri is and will be. And he's probably dealing with them. You mean he's... I don't want to assume anything, Joshua said. Just know that he took a great risk bringing you to me. I lowered my head solemnly. I didn't want to believe he was gone. But my heart knew better. I had no idea he was putting so much on the line for me. Listen, we don't have a lot of time, Rebecca. I know there's more on your mind, so go ahead and ask while you can. Joshua pushed me. I then looked up, remembering the biggest question of all. The one that no one else could answer. The question that only Joshua would know how to answer. I breathed in a gulp of air and then finally asked the burning question. Joshua, what is a night angel? Joshua stared at me and then leaned forward, staring into me with his deep eyes, and for a split moment they seemed to glow red again, like they did back in the sandwich shop. You don't want an answer to that question, he said. No, I think I do. I've been chased, beaten, attacked, and led all over this damn country, and all I have to show for it are unanswered questions and paranoia. A freaking pagan god is apparently out to get me, and everyone keeps calling me something that I don't even know what it is. I have to know what a night angel is. Joshua looked down on his feet and groaned. So your dad never told you? Told me what? I guess this is the reason he sent you to me, because of what you are. Because you're a night angel, he thought I could understand your situation. I'm one too, Joshua explained. I gasped instinctively, covering my mouth with my hand. Of course. It all made sense. This was why Joshua was so infamous. This was why Yuri wanted me to meet Joshua, because he too was a night angel. Of course he would know what one was. He was one. Well, if you're a night angel, then you're like me, right? I asked. Not exactly. I mean, yes, we're both night angels, but we're not quite the same, Joshua groaned. I'm really not the person. I guess I'm the only person, though, to be telling you this. I wish your dad had explained this sooner. All right, listen. I'll explain. Sure. I quickly fell silent to listen. The name Night Angel was created back in the Dark Ages. Back in those days, monsters were far more numerous and dangerous. There were few hunters, but they weren't as skilled and resourceful as they are today. The ultimate monster killers, the ultimate monster hunters, were night angels. They practically dwelled in the darkness. They were strong, fast, deadly, and even the creatures of the night knew to fear them. They seemed to possess otherworldly power that made them like the very beasts that they killed. And it was for that reason people believed that they were angels sent by God to protect them. So they were called the night angels. But we aren't really angels. What we are is something else entirely, Joshua explained. Well, what are we then? I asked, suspense filling my heart. Joshua looked up at me and grimaced. We're humans with the genes of monsters. What? Look, like I said, back in the Dark Ages, monsters were so numerous that it wasn't uncommon for humans and monsters to occasionally mate. And the result of this would often be just another monster, because the monster genes would become dominant over the human ones. But in some rare occasions, very rare occasions, the monster genes would be less powerful and dominant. The human genes would override them, and thus a night angel would be born. A human who possesses the strength, speed, and powers of a monster, and yet the body and form of a human. You could almost say that we're blessed by God, born from a monster and a human, and yet blessed to retain our humanity. My mother was a vampire, and my father was human. I'm the first night angel to appear in centuries that I know of, until you, of course. I let out a long sigh as he explained that to me, and I shook my head. No, that can't be true. I'm not a night angel. I was born to two humans. My mom and dad are both human. I sat back in the chair and shook my head. I'm sorry, Joshua, this was a waste of time. I'm not actually a night angel after all. Actually, Rebecca, there's no question that you're a night angel, Joshua answered. At this, I sat up and glared at him. What aren't you telling me? I growled dangerously. Joshua looked away as the sun began to shine through the curtains into our room. This is why I told you didn't want to know, and why your dad never told you. Tell me what you know, I roared. Joshua finally glared back at me with his red eyes. Do you know how your mother died? Joshua asked. Yeah, Dad told me she was killed by a werewolf a long time ago. Joshua snorted and shook his head, causing my face to go pale. I should have known he wouldn't tell you. Your father didn't want you to know the truth. What? What is it? What truth? Rebecca, your mother wasn't killed by a werewolf. She was killed because she was a werewolf. Chapter 14.
You lying son of a bitch! I shrieked. How can you even joke about something like that?
I jumped to my feet, fists trembling, my whole body ready to explode with rage. How dare this pompous jerk claim my mother was a werewolf when it was that very beast that had killed her? How could he live with himself saying such awful lies? And yet his eyes didn't falter. His position didn't even shift. Joshua merely stared at me with those same red eyes, not blinking, totally serious.
I'm not joking, Rebecca, he said darkly. Your mother was a werewolf. You are her offspring, and you have been blessed to be a night angel rather than a werewolf yourself. Honestly, you should feel honored.
Shut your lying mouth!
I slapped him hard across the face, and to my amazement, he just simply took it. He didn't try to dodge or stop me, even though I could tell he would have done so in an instant in any other circumstance.
Don't you say one more word about my mom. My mom was a good woman, a human woman. She died because a werewolf attacked our home when I was 3 years old.
Yes, that's what your father wanted you to believe. He didn't want you to know the truth about her, Joshua answered, rubbing his cheek. He feared that you would hate her if you knew.
I told you to shut up!
I made a move to slap him, but this time he moved. His reflexes were unbelievable. I barely even saw him move before he was on his feet, with my wrist clasped around his hand. I felt my strength leaving me as he tightened his grip on my arm.
No, you shut up and listen to me, Rebecca Anderson, Joshua snarled, shoving me back to the chair. You can hold on to your selfish pride if you want, and you can deny what your mother was if that'll help you sleep at night. But there is no question that you are a night angel, which can only mean that one of your parents was a monster of some kind. So you tell me, Rebecca, what do you believe to be the truth? If I'm lying, what is the truth?
You're mistaken. I'm not a night angel, and I'm out of here.
I got to my feet and stormed for the door. I wasn't going to hear one more word of him. He had said enough lies. He'd spoken enough evil.
You feel most alive at night, don't you?
I stopped.
What?
Society bores you. You don't care about grades in school. You don't even really care about dating all that much. You don't really have a social life because it just slows you down.
I stood there, listening to every word.
At night, you feel your blood go wild. And when there's a full moon in the sky, you feel brand new. You feel like a new creation. It's like you're high on something, right?
How did he know all that? How could he know me so well?
How do you...
Because that's what a night angel is, Rebecca. We're warriors in service of the night. We are the monsters that prey on other monsters. And you know I'm right. Whether you're ready to accept your mother's true nature to be truth or not is your business, but you can't deny what you are.
I stood stock still. It was all rushing down on me too quickly. It couldn't be true what he was saying. There was no way my mom was a werewolf. She couldn't have been. But it made sense. My nightly adventures, my desire to hunt, my intentional resistance to social living in school, and even my strange energy that I felt under a full moon. Joshua stood up and stretched as if this conversation was boring to him.
It can't be true. How do you know all this? I asked.
Joshua suddenly stopped his stretch and groaned, looking away, as if he was ashamed of the answer.
I know because, well, it was my father who killed your mother.
I could have exploded.
What?
I spun to face him, rage in my eyes.
Your father's a good man, Rebecca. He tried his best to maintain the relationship with your mother, and to do that, he was developing some kind of medicine, a potion of some kind that would keep your mother under control during her transformations. My dad warned him about what would happen. My father was a better hunter than I was. But one night, she got out of control again, and your father couldn't get to her. Your mother was about to slaughter you and your father. My dad, he had no choice but to put her down.
Put her down, I sneered. Like just some mangy dog. That's all she is to you, isn't she? That's all any monster is to you. They're all just dangerous dogs that need putting down.
That's not fair, Rebecca.
But it's true, isn't it?
Tell that to the little vampire sleeping in the next room, Joshua snarled.
For once, I had to be silent. Indeed, Joshua was traveling with a young vampire girl, so perhaps he did have sympathy for some monsters, but just clearly not any for my mother.
Tell me this, Rebecca. Were you in my father's situation that night, what would you have done? What would you have done in my father's shoes?
I knew the answer to that question. I knew it, but couldn't bring myself to say it.
I would have found a way. With that, I slammed the door and bolted out of the room. I couldn't be in that room anymore. Truth or lies, it was hurting me too much to stand there and listen to it. So I was safe for the time being, running outside. I could be away from all those awful words. I needed air. I just needed to think. It was daylight outside. No vampires could get me here. I could stand outside and think. All this time, it had been a lie. Everything Dad had said about Mom being killed by a werewolf had been a lie. Was she really a werewolf? Had she really been a monster? I fell back against a parked car and covered my face with my hands. I was shaking. I thought back to the family pictures that had Mom in them. I remembered her happy, smiling face, and I recalled seeing shadows under her eyes in some of them. Dad had said she suffered from insomnia. If she was a werewolf, no kidding. I'd never thought about it before, but the more I thought about the alternative, the more I couldn't ignore what Joshua had said. Why? Why did it have to be me? This just wasn't fair. I rubbed my eyes with my sleeve and tried to dry my face off. This just didn't seem right. Why did I have to be one to suffer? Why did all this crap have to fall on me? Excuse me, miss. Go away, I grumbled back. It was a man speaking, but I didn't have time to look up at him.
Well, you're leaning on my car. I kind of need it.
I sighed and stood up looking away, not wanting to show anyone my face. Sorry.
I don't mean to pry, but is something wrong? The man asked.
Yeah, you're sticking your nose in my business. That's what's wrong. Just leave me alone, okay?
Miss, I don't mean to offend you. I only wanted to help.
I gripped my arm tightly, punishing myself for snapping. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap. I'm just dealing with a lot right now. As much as I appreciate it, you can't help me.
Well, maybe not, but me and my buddies were about to grab some breakfast. Would you like to join in? My treat.
I smiled at the offer and finally turned to face him. That'd be very nice. I gasped, stepping back.
It was impossible. It couldn't be. Is everything all right, miss?
You! The person staring back at me was a vampire, one that I recognized. His eyes were glowing red and his fangs were bared in a mocking smile. Behind him were at least 4 others, and all of them were sneering and snickering. They were all young vampires from the look of them, about 16 to 25 in appearance, but it was often hard to tell how old a vampire was.
What's the matter, miss? You seem terrified, he laughed.
How? How are you walking in daylight? I snapped. The vampire pointed to his cheek, where I could make out a slight white residue on his skin. His buddy tossed a bottle at me, and I caught it, and my eyes widened. It was a bottle of sunscreen.
Shoot, yeah, sure. We'll still cook in here like it's a sauna, but we can walk around for just a little while, the vampire laughed.
At least temporarily. What happens when it wears off?
You'll be dead before that, miss, the vampire chuckled. His buddies spread out, making a circle around me. They were all hissing and flexing their arm muscles. They weren't here to take prisoners. They were going to kill me. I made a move to grab for my gun, but then realized I'd left it in the hotel room. I was defenseless again.
I wasn't kidding when I said we were going to have breakfast, and it is certainly our treat. The vampires laughed and attacked. I took a swing at the closest one, but he grabbed my wrist without any effort, pushing me down on my knees. I let out a scream and tried to fight back. More hands grabbed me. Let me go, you blood-sucking bastards! Ooh, she's got a mouth. Maybe we should get her to use that mouth for something else. One of the vampires laughed. The others hissed their agreement, and I began to panic. Would you just kill me and get it over with? The vampires all laughed at that my demand, knowing that death would come soon, but only when they wanted it. This was the end. I wouldn't never see my father's face again, and then I would see my mother, and I could get the truth from her once and for all.
Now, I can't let them kill you, Rebecca. What would your father say?
All the vampires turned as I did and saw a figure walking towards us. It was Joshua again. He had his hands in his pockets, and he had an irritated look on his face.
What have you gotten yourself into this time?
Who the hell are... Joshua pulled a special-looking knife from his belt and plunged it into the vampire's chest before he could even finish the sentence.
I didn't tell you to speak, Joshua muttered. He then turned back to Rebecca. Where are your weapons?
In the room, Rebecca whispered.
Excellent. Good opportunity for you to learn from the real abilities of a night angel, Joshua answered with a smile. I'll take care of these boys for you, but I want you to watch carefully and learn something. I've had enough of this guy, the vampire holding me roared. He made a mad dash at Joshua, who was still several yards away from him. At the speed he was going, Joshua wouldn't be able to dodge in time. Watch carefully, he whispered. It was like the slightest flash of motion. As if a camera had taken a photo, and then a flash, the actors had just twitched. But it was there. Joshua merely stepped to the side, and the vampire shot past him like a bullet, missing him by inches. Where exactly are you aiming? Joshua asked. Get him! It was an onslaught of roaring and screaming vampires. Rebecca's mouth fell open in wonder as Joshua continued to dodge every one of them. It was like he wasn't even trying, like some elegant dance. He just simply sidestepped and swirled around each strike, each punch, and each bite. He was smiling at it. He seemed almost amused by their efforts. Their maddening strikes kept sliding away from him, and he just stepped away. How was it possible? Vampires could move at twice the speed of humans, and somehow he could anticipate them and avoid them. Night angels have an above-average perception of the world around them, especially at night. We see things that no human ever could see. The slightest motion, the smallest sense of anger, even the essence of a vampire's bloodlust are all things we can see clear as day. And when you can master your senses of perception, the fastest monsters in the world will never touch you, because you'll see the attack even before they can think it up. The vampires were now looking very, very worried. His buddies all nodded at him, recognizing the superiority of Joshua's skill. Keep watching, Rebecca, because there's a lot to learn. I'm going to show you the real strength we possess. You're not a human, Rebecca. You're a night angel.
Chapter 15. There was no way to describe the amazing force with which Joshua fought the vampires. He was like a hurricane. It was the only description she could think of. He was a force that was unstoppable and yet completely untouched by his opposition. These vicious, savage beasts were mere paper dolls in the face of a gale storm. It was clear from the satisfied smile on Joshua's face that he was literally toying with them at this point. The only reason he hadn't killed them all yet was because he was trying to teach me through this fight, but what I was supposed to be learning was still a mystery to me. What was he trying to teach me? What was I learning? I watched his every move as best I could, but his speed was unreal. It was actually hard to keep track of him. Rebecca, Joshua finally spoke up, slowing down and standing to face me. If you learn nothing else from this, know that you are beyond a human. The limits you believed restraining you are nothing. As night angels, we push past those limits and enter the realm of legends.
Right. I've had enough of this asshole. He's making us look like children, the head of the vampire shouted through his bloody mouth and cut lip. All the vampires had indeed been handled like mere infants. All were cut and mutilated in ways that I'd barely been able to follow. Children? Joshua asked. You know what? That's not a bad term to describe you. A bunch of loudmouth little brats who think that just because you have a few new toys and tricks up your sleeves, you own the whole goddamn world. So you know what? You're right. You are children. And I think it's time I put you children over my knee. Who wants daddy's belt? The snide and cocky manner in which he spoke sounded so familiar to me. He sounded like a vampire. Almost all vampires spoke with that arrogant tone of voice. Was this part of his vampire blood? Whatever it was clear that his words were not only angering the gang, but it was terrifying them. Most of them trembled in horror, and one even backed away. We need to get out of here, man. What will the boss say if we come back empty-handed? I don't know, but he's better than being here. He's a monster! Joshua merely walked forward and pulled out his knife. I guess we'll start with you, then. It was barely a twitch, the tiniest moment. Joshua suddenly vanished in a blur, and the only indication that he'd moved was the shine of the sun off the blade of his knife that left a glow that traveled from where he stood through the vampire's ranks. And in that same moment of passing, the vampire's chest ripped open with a scream of pain. The vampire collapsed, his chest bloody and torn, cut open by the knife. Before the others could even respond, they began dropping one at a time. One by one, they all hit the ground, cut down by the flashing knife. And when all had fallen, Joshua reappeared, cleaning the knife off. How did you do that? I gasped, staring at the bloody mess before me. The vampires' bodies were already turning to ashes and burning before my eyes. Vampires can move with enhanced reflexes. By using the glare of the sun on my blade and by using those reflexes, I was able to create an illusion of near invisibility. You must be more than a hunter to these creatures. You must become something they fear. Joshua replied, putting his knife away. I simply stood before him, taking in this power, this superiority. Could I really have access to this kind of power? And could Joshua teach it to me? If I learn to master these abilities, will I be able to beat Set? I asked.
Joshua looked down at the ashes on the ground that were once the vampire gang. "Be very careful, Rebecca," he muttered. "These vampires believe that by mastering some new skills and powers, they were invincible. If you rely on just the new powers I can show you, then you'll meet the same fate they did. No, if you want to defeat Set, you must rely on far more than what I can teach you. Trust in yourself, your instincts, your sense of justice, and if you can do that, well, no normal monster can kill you anyway. As for Set, we might need to come up with another strategy." The cocky arrogance that he had before was gone, and Joshua's eyes had returned to the soft, dark blue eyes he had before. I smiled and nodded, now very happy that I had a warrior like him on my side. So this was a night angel. "I'd like to learn if you'll teach me." "I will, but not here and not now. We'll begin training at night. For now, go get some rest. I'm going to go do some snooping around and find ourselves some allies and possibly a place to set up a better base than this hotel. Go on back to the room and get some rest." I silently agreed and returned to the apartment. As I made my way up the stairs to the door, I was suddenly aware of the tiredness in my legs. It felt like I was being running all day. How could I be so worn out? Then there was the fact that my mother was a werewolf. Have I finally come to accept that fact? Did it really matter at this point, though? Well, of course it mattered, but it couldn't get in the way of what I had to do. Whether it was true or not, Joshua was by far the strongest hunter I'd ever seen, and to leave now after all my father, Yuri, and I had gone through would just be a spit in the face to all that we've been fighting for. I opened the door to the apartment and staggered inside. "Well, this is a pretty homey place, lass." I squealed and jumped backwards as I saw the little man sitting in the chair. I couldn't forget that green suit and tie, that green-tinted skin, and those beady yellow eyes. "Morgan?" I shouted. "In the flesh, dearie," he laughed. The leprechaun leaned back in his chair and smiled as his sharp teeth showed. "Well, looks like you finally found yourself another night angel." "You knew," I snarled him. "You knew all along what a night angel was, but you didn't tell me. Where would be the fun in just spilling the beans, lass? If you don't try figuring some things out by yourself, you'll never progress in life." He laughed, sipping on a mug of what I thought was beer. "Oh, chin up, lass. You're doing a pretty damn good job." "A good job at what, exactly?" "Stirring things up," he said with a sly grin. "You're the talk of the underworld now. A second night angel appearing in the world was crazy enough, but now that night angel is being trained by the first. Ha ha! Well, that's just newsworthy right there." "You bastard. Sticks and stones, love," he shrugged. "Besides, you really should be more polite. I have some news you might find interesting." "I doubt it." "It concerns that vampire friend of yours. Yuri, correct?" I paused at the sound of Yuri's name and spun to face Morgan. He seemed delighted at my sudden interest. "What do you know about Yuri?" No, my dear. First, I want something from you," he laughed. "What do you want? Money? That ridiculous paper rubbish you call currency? Ah, no, thank you." "Now, I'll take another beer, please," he snickered. "Can't you just use your magic to make another one?" "Well, I could, but beer tastes so much sweeter when prepared by a lovely young lady. Now be a dear and be quick about it." Normally, I would have argued and fought with the little green menace, but I was desperate for news about Yuri, so I hurried to the kitchen to look for any alcohol we might have. To my delight, I found a bottle of Bud Light and walked it out to him. Upon seeing the bottle, the leprechaun's face twisted into a disgusted grimace. "Is this all you got?" I suppose it'll do. Could you maybe put on a nice barmaid outfit to go with it?" I blushed angrily and shoved the bottle into his hand. "I got your damn drink, and that's all I agreed to. Now you hold up your end of the deal, you little gremlin." Fine. He sipped the beer and then tapped his chin as if he was scanning his little brain for the information he was looking for. "Well, I got good news, and I got bad news. The good news is that Yuri managed to get away from the Blood Brothers. He's safe for now in a little safe house owned by some hunters who know him. There he'll stay until things die down some." "That's a relief," I breathed. "I was worried for a while there." Well, don't get your hopes up too high, lass, 'cause I ain't told you the bad news yet," he laughed. "Your little run-in with S himself has gotten him all excited. He's making moves now that are catching most of the underground and the world itself off guard." "What are you talking about?" "You don't know a thing about Set, do you, lass? He's a being of pure chaos. He don't care how many live and how many die, so long as he gets a good yuck out of the deal," Morgan replied. "Even the feared Joshua Reigns himself is afraid of Set's power." "Why? What makes Set so dangerous anyway?" For once in the time I'd seen him, Morgan looked somewhat scared. A flash of fear rolled across his face, and he looked around. You don't know a damn thing, do you, lass? It ain't about such power, it's about what he's after. Well, what is he after? Tell me. Morgan shook his head. I don't know. Nobody does. Nobody knows why Set does anything, and that's what terrifies us. Why has Set returned to the realm of mortals? Why now? What's he after? We all want answers, lass, but Set is impossible to predict. Impossible to even understand. As Morgan explained, I thought back to my own encounter with his creature. I remembered that night as it was engraved in my mind permanently. That cold, horrible laugh that sounded like the barking of a savage dog. Those sick, yellow, golden eyes, that twisted, fanged smile that seemed to devour all peace around his face. His very body was a physical representation of disorder and fear. And I remembered his words. You will soon learn, my dear, that there are some beings in this world for whom the means don't need an end. There is no why or reason for what I do. I do what I do simply because true chaos and destruction does not require a reason. There is no why, I said. He has no reasons for his actions. He doesn't act towards a goal, but rather just to stir up pieces on the board. Now you're starting to understand, girl, Morgan growled. Now you know why we fear that monster so much. Oh, you take great care, lass. You don't know what kind of ancient shite you're diving into here. I was about to respond when I suddenly heard rustling behind us. I spun around to see a small figure walk down the hall and into the living room. It was Kirai. She was in her little dress and her hair was messy. She was rubbing her sleepy eyes and yawning, still exhausted. Joshua, are you here? Who are you talking to? I turned to tell Morgan to leave, but as soon as I turned in the chair, I saw no one. It was like he'd never been there at all. I had to give that little rat some credit. He was good at cleaning up after himself. No, Joshua went out to do some scouting. He'll be back later. Kirai looked up at me, and it was then I realized that I'd barely gotten to know this little vampire. What was it about her that brought out Joshua's sympathetic side? He sure didn't know any of that to the vampire gang earlier. Who are you? She asked. My name's Rebecca Anderson. Joshua picked me up last night, remember? So, you're Joshua's friend? She asked, yawning. Something like that, yes. Okay. My name's Kirai. Well, it's very nice to meet you, Kirai. You're a vampire, right? She nodded in response. Why are you traveling with Joshua? You do know he hunts vampires, right? Kirai giggled and shook her head, turning to go back to bed. No, Joshua doesn't hunt vampires, she laughed. Joshua hunts monsters. I raised an eyebrow and blinked a few times, confused by her words. But that's what I said. No, you said Joshua hunts vampires. He hunts monsters. Not all vampires are monsters, and not all monsters are vampires. With that, she turned and walked back to her room to go get to sleep, leaving me endlessly fascinated by both her and Joshua. Joshua hunts monsters, but not all vampires are monsters, and not all monsters are vampires. My thoughts turned back to Yuri, and now I'd been so concerned for his well-being despite him being a vampire. It was only now that I understood what it was that Joshua really did, why he took in Kirai and trusted her, why Morgan was helping me. A monster wasn't what something was. It was who someone is.
Chapter 16. I woke the next morning and yawned. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I had. I stood in my bed and was in nothing more than my underwear. I was in a hotel bedroom, and I was curled up under the sheets. The sun was casting an orange glow over the horizon, and I realized that I must have slept through the whole day. How tired had I been? It must have been seriously worn out because my whole body felt heavy. I glanced at the pillow, and I was surprised to see a yellow note on it. I quickly went to grab it and picked it up. It was in a quick and sloppy handwriting, but it was legible. Hope you slept well, because you'll need it. Your training begins at 9:30 p.m. sharp. Meet me in Kirai on the cornfields a mile from here. Sincerely, Joshua. Did he leave this here while I was sleeping? Did he see me in my underwear? I squealed, covering myself instinctively. Doesn't he have any shame? I then noticed the clock to see that it was just 9.
I had 30 minutes. I leapt out of bed and threw on my shirt, jeans, jacket. I slipped on my boots and grabbed my equipment bag, including my bow. I didn't know what training he had in mind, but I had to be ready for anything. I checked my reflection in the mirror and adjusted my hair. I never considered myself a super attractive girl, but the prospect of Joshua seeing me sleep suddenly made me stop and wonder if he liked what he'd seen. I gazed at my long wavy brown hair and my deep green eyes, and I touched my cheek and noticed that I had a few sleep marks where my face had pressed against the pillow. I must have looked a mess. Wait, what am I thinking? I need to focus here. There's still a pagan god out there that I need to fight. I don't have time to worry about boys or my looks. I slapped my cheeks a few times to snap those silly thoughts out of my head and ran for the exit. Suddenly a thought that mattered occurred to me. How was I going to find this cornfield? It may only be a mile away or so, but I was unfamiliar with this area. I walked to the front desk at the hotel and rang the bell. An older man walked out and smiled.
"Hello?" he asked.
"My name's Rebecca. I'm looking for a nearby cornfield." He blinked and smiled.
"Cornfield? Oh, well, you must mean the old Bain farm to the east. It's a creepy old place. No one goes there anymore. Are you a tourist?" he asked.
I guess you could say that. Why do you ask?"
"Well, that's half the reason people even come to this town. They come to see the cornfield at night. They say that it's haunted, you know. It's a silly legend," he laughed. "I don't believe it myself, but I still don't like the look of the place, granted."
Now I was intrigued. I was curious if this really was the place I was going to begin my Night Angel training. "Tell me the legend, please," I begged. He looked at me and shook his head.
"It's an unpleasant thing,"
He said, "Please, just tell me. I really want to know." He leaned against the desk and glanced around to make sure no one was listening. When he was sure the room was empty, he began.
"Back in 1967, there were these two brothers, see. They were called the Rice brothers. One was named Jamie, and the other was named Sheen. Their father was the owner and operator of the corn farm they owned, and their family made a small fortune off the corn harvest they had. Now, Sheen was a pretty bright and gifted young man and always did what his father told him. He worked the land with the employees and was a pretty upstanding individual. Jamie, on the other hand, fell in with the wrong crowd, you might say. He stole, slept around, broke all his father's rules. He was a real piece of work."
"Sounds rough, but what's the legend?" I asked.
"Don't rush me. Now it came time for their father to die, and the two brothers were wondering who would get their father's land and the fortune that came with it. Of course, you know how their father chose. He chose Sheen, of course."
But Jamie wasn't too happy.
"No kidding. According to the legend, their father did more than deny Jamie the fortune, but he said that Jamie wasn't to come within 10 miles of the farm. He was to leave his land and never return. So Jamie, well, that sent him over the edge. He was a greedy bastard, and he wouldn't let his goody two-shoes brother Sheen take what he wanted.
So what happened?"
He decided if he couldn't have the fortune, then he'd ruin the cornfield for his father's whole family. He gathered up his crew of hooligans, went into the field one night around midnight, and killed every employee of his father's, including his own brother Sheen, the old man whispered. Now, of course, again, this is the legend. Their father was furious and filled with grief when he heard about this, and with his dying breath he cursed Sheen and all of his friends. He said that no one would have his farm except for the one who rightfully deserved it, and that the souls of the ones he killed would defend the cornfield from all trespassers.
Go on.
Well, the story gets even more silly from there. They say that the next night, the ones that Jamie had killed returned to life as the living dead and killed Jamie as well as his friends. But when the police arrived the next morning to investigate, there was nothing to find. No bodies, no blood, no evidence. They say that the cornfield is cursed to this day, and that every night at midnight, the souls of the murdered field hands, including those of Sheen and Jamie, rise to kill anyone who trespass on their father's land.
That's terrible, I noted.
It's a silly legend. I don't believe it for a moment. But I will admit, there's something very unsettling about that place, he quivered.
So how exactly would I find this barn? Following the old man's instructions, the sun was just about to set as I noticed a field beyond the trees. The trees around me were pitch black as the orange and red glow above was the only light to be seen. A moon overhead shone down and I basked in it. The cool night air was all around me and it felt so good. Suddenly the nighttime stillness was shattered by a loud gunshot. What the? I ran for the sound and broke through the trees to see a most odd sight. It was Joshua, standing off to the side near the trees. He was holding a shotgun or rifle in his hand, and he was standing beside a small clay pigeon launcher that Kirai was sitting next to. She smiled up at him, and he aimed the gun. "Pull!" he shouted. Kirai yanked on the contraption, and a small clay pigeon went whizzing through the air. Joshua waited a moment and then fired. The pigeon exploded into nothing. A perfect shot. How'd he done that when it was so dark outside?
"Hey, kid,"
he called. He turned and looked at me, and Kirai smiled too. "Hi," Kirai called. "Hey, I got your note," I answered.
"So you did. You're a little late, but I'll forgive you this time," Josh replied. "I assume you know what this place is."
The old desk clerk told me the whole story. "Is my training involved with that story? Are we going to kill those spirits?" I asked. "What's my training? What do I do?"
Joshua walked to me and held out the shotgun. "Shoot a few clay pigeons."
"Huh?"
"The spirits won't show up until midnight, so we have a few hours. Let's pass the time with some clay pigeon shooting." "You can shoot a shotgun, right?"
"But what about my training? I need to learn how to be a night angel, right?"
"We'll discuss that. Now come on." He snapped me towards the contraption. "Take your best shot. Just yell pull when you're ready."
I was nervous. I never handled a shotgun before, but that wasn't the problem. How was I going to shoot clay pigeons in the dark? It was too hard to see. I held the gun and tried to focus. Pull?" I screamed. Kirai pulled a lever and the launcher fired a pigeon. I aimed and fired quickly.
"Miss," Joshua spoke. "Go again."
"Pull!" I roared.
Again it launched and I fired. "Miss," Joshua smirked.
"Look, this is impossible. I can't see the damn thing, even if I did know how to use this gun."
"That's your human weakness talking," Joshua snarled.
I gaped and looked at him.
He had his arms crossed and he was glaring at me. "You listen to me, Rebecca. You can't trust your eyes. As a night angel, you have keener senses that humans could only dream of. You probably didn't even notice the kick of that weapon, did you?"
I paused a moment and realized that I hadn't felt it. I imagined that the shotgun would kick into my shoulder, but I'd barely noticed it.
"The night is your realm. You should be able to take 3 pigeons out of the sky easily with a single shot."
"But I can't see it."
"Because you're looking with your eyes. Don't see it with your eyes, feel it with your senses. Listen to the pigeon as it leaves the launcher. Watch the silhouette it casts in the sky. Smell it on the air. Feel its chalky texture."
"That's all crazy.
Can't?" Joshua asked. "Can't what?" "You can't shoot a simple clay pigeon in the dark." "Don't joke with me, Rebecca Anderson. Your father sent me emails about you. Told me a bit about how you could do all the things that he could tell me on the phone. You hunt monsters almost nightly. You use a bow and arrow, no less, to do it. Haven't you ever noticed just how easy it is for you at night to use your weapons when it should be so hard for you to see?"
In that instant, I suddenly realized it. He was right. I hunted with my bow and arrow at night all the time, and I never once had a problem seeing what I was doing. But the night had always been there. It was always dark. How had I seen everything so clearly? I hadn't thought about it, I admitted.
"It's because of what you are, Rebecca. We night angels possess an inner instinct, likened to that of an animal. At night our skills increase and our senses become heightened. The night is nothing to us. In fact, it fuels us. Let go of your thoughts and your stress. Hold the shotgun firmly in your hands. Let your instincts take over and give in to the night. Don't trust your eyes. Trust your body. Trust your instincts. Make the shot like a creature of the night would." Before I could pull, Joshua shouted to Kirai, "Pull!" Kirai pulled the contraption and the pigeon launched. I fired and missed. Fired and missed. Joshua didn't slow down. He kept telling her to pull, pull, pull. Again and again and again, a clay pigeon would fly. On the 4th one, all at once, I began to feel a wave of feeling creep over me. The night slowly didn't seem so dark. I could smell things. I could hear the slightest rustle of a tree limb. I could feel the weight of the gun, but it hardly bothered me. I could hear the pigeon cutting through the air. It was a target. It was my enemy. I raised the gun and took aim. I couldn't see it per se, but I didn't need to. Somehow I knew where it was. Somehow I knew. I fired. The pigeon exploded to bits. "Excellent shot," Joshua smiled. "So how did that feel?" I felt the world crash around me as I stumbled back. The rush I felt at that moment was overwhelming. It was like I'd been on adrenaline high, and then it was all gone. That was intense. It was like I didn't even need to see it, even though I
I felt like I could, without seeing it, and oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Calm down. It felt natural, right? Joshua said with a grin. We have a few hours before the spirits show up, and then we'll put tonight's little training to the real test. Until then, let's keep shooting some pigeons. Get a feel for your senses, and learn how to respond to them with your full reflexes. We might make a night angel out of you yet. Kirai, pull!
I fired.
Chapter 17.
Not bad work, Rebecca, Joshua said with a smile.
For the last few hours, she simply watched me shoot. It had been difficult at times, and there were plenty of moments where I'd been shouted at for letting my focus slip. But then there were moments where I felt that similar sensation of merging with the night. How was this all possible? How could it seem so naturally to me that I could actually see through the dark? The oddest fact to me was that I'd never noticed this in the past, and yet now it seemed like it had all to relearn the skill. Joshua was smiling at me in an oddly impressed way. There was a flick of admiration, or at least recognition, in his eyes. How did he feel seeing another night angel? If he felt anything like I did, then surely he was just as conflicted. I looked upon Joshua in a manner that made me feel like I was staring in a mirror. His skills and his experience dwarfed mine without me even having to witness him in action, and there was something so very familiar around him that, as if I'd known him for a long time. The way he walked, spoke, ordered me around, and encouraged me. I felt like I was speaking to a complete stranger while also a close friend. Why did he bring these feelings and thoughts out of me? Was it perhaps that he was a night angel like myself, or was there something more to it? You're pretty good with a shotgun, Kirai said happily, cleaning up the shards of clay pigeons.
Kirai, go collect the ones that didn't get broken, please. We'll reuse them later on.
Kirai nodded and ran off to go collect them. I watched her go, her little legs pushing through the tall grass and her deep red eyes glowing in the dark. I smiled at the girl. One would have easily forgotten what she was. Where did you find her? I asked.
Joshua's arms were crossed and he was looking off in the direction of the moon. His eyes narrowed slightly, but his lips curled into the smallest of sneers. Found her, he chuckled. I found her beaten and tied to a post by some monster hunters. They'd done things to her that I won't speak of here, not while she's around to hear them.
I gasped and looked back at the little girl. The smile on her face was so innocent and genuine. Could it even be real that she'd been through such a horror? You saved her then? I asked.
I guess she sees it that way, Joshua nodded. But I see it differently. In a way, Kirai saved me that night.
Joshua's voice was softer now and not as fierce or commanding. There was gentleness there, and I could feel the man behind the hunter.
Sometimes we become so passionate about hunting evil and twisted monsters of the night that we forget to not become monsters ourselves.
What do you mean?
Now's not the time for that. Joshua snapped quickly as Kirai came skipping back, holding at least 8 clay pigeons in her small arms. She looked up at Joshua and held them up as he carefully took them and put them in a box. Run this back to the car, kid.
Okay. Kirai picked up the box with relative ease and hurried away to the night. She'll be okay?
Few creatures see more clearly in the night than vampires. She'll be just fine. If there's a problem, she'll let me know. But on to the topic at hand. The hour is nearly upon us.
You mean when the dead come back to life?
You know the story behind this place, or at least you were told the town legend. But I'm going to tell you the brutal truth about what you're going to see tonight, Joshua elaborated. You heard that the dead would guard this place, no doubt? Well, there's truth to that legend. It's a voodoo curse.
Voodoo curse? I've never dealt with voodoo before.
Have you dealt with zombies? Joshua asked.
Of course.
Well, we're dealing with ghouls. They're in many ways the same thing, but the difference here is that they can't be put down. Normally, zombies are reanimated by a virus or bewitchment of the brain that reactivates the body. However, in this case, there's a talisman of some kind, or voodoo artifact that's keeping the dead active. It doesn't matter how many times you shoot or stab these beasts, as long as that artifact is still untouched, they'll keep getting up and coming back, regenerating from any damage you could possibly do. As he checked his watch, he snorted. And we have 5 minutes before they start coming for us.
Wait, then you're saying we're screwed?
Fear began to grip my heart. The fear of facing an unknown threat and also seeing no answer to this problem began to frighten me.
My thoughts kept leaping back and forth between the zombies I was used to. I played the scene over and over in my head. I saw myself drawing my bow and putting an arrow into the eye of a zombie. I saw it fall with a pathetic groan, but the scene didn't end with that. The beast would begin to move again, plucking the air from its eyes if it were nothing. It was unstoppable. It would just keep getting up, a mindless, flesh-eating monster that couldn't be stopped.
I didn't say it was impossible, did I? Joshua asked. We have a few tricks up our sleeves, too. I know how to destroy the talisman. I even have a theory about where it is.
Oh, good. Well, then go break it already before they come out and...
There are rules to this, he snapped back, shooting me a very disapproving look. It was clear I was acting a bit over the top and unprepared for him. I can't simply break it. There are things that must be done first. Leave it to me for now.
Well, then what do you want me to do? I asked.
You're going to go into the cornfield and hold off the horde. Don't let them interrupt my ritual. My heart stopped and I knew the blood must be draining from my face, too. I started to stutter.
You want me to fight off a horde of unkillable ghouls?
Yes, Joshua stated. If all goes well, this should only take 15 minutes. You can last that long.
How the hell do you know that?
I squeaked back, fear clearly showing in my voice, and it made him sneer. Because, Rebecca, if you can't last that long on your own against a bunch of ghouls, then we really don't have a chance against Set, do we? And I have to believe we have a chance. Now spend your energy preparing for the battle and less of it complaining and wetting your pants.
I am not wetting my pants, you jerk. Is Rebecca wetting your pants? Kirai giggled, walking back to us.
I blushed and groaned. The smirk on Joshua's face clearly screamed out that he'd set that one up for me. Just trust your instincts, Rebecca. Besides, you're in your element tonight. Haven't you looked at the moon? He glanced up at it, and I too gazed. It was large and round, glowing a luminous white that seemed to punch a hole in the sky itself and leave an unearthly aura upon the sky. The stars around it gave way to its rays, and I felt a strange energy surge through my veins just looking at it.
It's a full moon.
Yeah, you should be in your element with such a good moon. Good luck, kid. I'll be back to check on you later.
The cornfield was tall, and I kept thinking I heard the sound of groaning, but no, just the rustling and creaking of the stalk. 5 minutes had clearly passed, but there was no sign of the legions of undead coming my way. Had we been wrong? Could we have been early? Or maybe it's just a joke, I growled. It would make sense, too. Joshua was likely sneaking through the corn right now, ready to scare me. This was all a prank he'd put together. He might have been bribing that hotel clerk to do this to me. Voodoo? I've been hunting monsters for years and not once encountered something like that. Who knows that it's even existed? And how could anyone up here know it? What a bunch of junk. I scoffed and turned to leave. Holy mother of... I halted in my tracks as I saw a man standing before me. I hadn't even heard him coming, but there he was. He had a slight beard, and he was wearing what appeared to be overalls and a wide-rimmed hat made of straw. He was staring at me in possible confusion. He must have been just as surprised to see me as I was. Oh, geez, don't scare me like that. I thought you were my
Trespasser, the man hissed. His voice was not human. It didn't even sound close. It was like a frog had learned to speak through croaks. The sound of his voice shook me to my core, and in the light of the moon, I could see the man a little better. And I did not like what I saw. His eyes were pale and pupilless, just empty white void. His mouth was slightly open, and I could see sharp teeth inside behind his rotting lips. His hands were scabbed like any farmer's, but his fingernails were stained black and red from blood. And his skin was this disgusting dark gray like a corpse. Like a ghoul. A ghoul! I backed away as the ghoul came lumbering towards me, his arms outstretched. Indeed, this ghoul was different from any ordinary zombie, as it had actually formed a word. Zombies were incapable of speech, so this ghoul was a different breed of freak altogether. Trespasser! The shriek came louder, roaring and stumbling towards me. I pulled my gun and put a round in its forehead. It jerked back, but soon was moving towards me again. I fired 2 more times, but the same result each time. It only slowed him down. He wasn't going to stop. He just kept coming again and again. Damn it! I screamed as I felt a pair of hands behind me. I shrieked louder and whirled around to see another man, black, this time with almost nothing on his body, growling and walking towards me. Trespasser! Oh God! Oh God! I looked around to see more rustling and moving in the corn crop. They were closing in on me. I was locked in with nowhere to go. I screamed for Joshua, but there was no response, only the loud rumblings of the ghouls around me, their blood-stained teeth baring at me as they moved upon me. I pulled my knife and swung it, chopping off an arm of a nearby ghoul and glaring at him. Stay back!
What was I supposed to do? I couldn't escape, and fighting was almost impossible. I then glanced up and saw it. The moon. The beautiful, glowing full moon peering down at me from its perch in the night sky. The sky was on fire with its brilliance, and that fire was burning me on the inside. The fear I'd felt gave way to some kind of courage and confidence. These walking heaps of flesh were dolls against me. I felt alive. I felt powerful. I could feel my lips curl into a snarl and a growl escape my throat, almost like a dog, or perhaps I dared to think, a wolf. My eyes were only a part of my senses, and I could feel the night. I could smell the blood in the air and the stench of death on the corpses. I could hear the rustling. The feel of the air helped me paint a vivid picture of the world around me. I didn't just see the ghoul. I could anticipate, calculate, and destroy. One ghoul was foolish enough to grab my arm and try to throw me to the ground. With a growl I myself hardly recognized, I grabbed his own arm and ripped it clean from his shoulder. I charged and shouldered him to the ground. He fell like a sack of potatoes, and with an amused smirk, I turned to the others that were closing in. As they approached, I let out a long and excited howl of excitement. It was a powerful, chilling note, and it was mine. I owned it. I controlled it. This was my power, the power of a night angel. I would have time to think on all this later if I lived through this, but for now I was going to enjoy every moment. I would finish fighting this horde, and live or die, it would be glorious. A part of me even felt like Joshua should take his time breaking the voodoo curse. I wanted to have fun on this gorgeous night. Chapter 18. It was living power. Living energy. It was welling up inside me like a fountain, and it felt great. I smiled as the night lit up like a noon sun. I could see everything. I could smell everything. I could hear everything. There were no secrets to hide from me tonight. The ghouls that lumbered toward me were little more than meaningless piles of meat. They were worthless. The closest one made a move to strike, but a mere kick was enough to send him flying backwards. Another approached from behind as if attempting to catch my blind spot. But I already knew he was coming. I could smell his rotting flesh, and with an elbow to my back, I sent his rotten nose so far into his skull that I could hear it cracking the bone. What was this power? I'd felt it before on rare occasions, the most recent time being with that troll attack. But this was even better than that, because that hadn't been a full moon. The strangest sensation I'd ever felt. It's hard to put into words, but the only way I could describe it is that there is a sleeping wolf inside of me, and when I gaze upon the glory of the full moon, it's as if this wolf wakes up and takes me over, using my own body to destroy its enemies. My actions were hardly my own. I didn't even need to think about doing them. I just did them. It was as if it were all mere instinct, a mere primal understanding. I smell my attacker, and then I respond. When I hear another's footsteps, I know where he'll be. I can taste the bloodlust, smell the filth, and hear the groans and whispering winds of the night. All these things paint the world in a vibrant hue of night, of life, and of death. I pulled my knife and went into the fight even further. There was more fun than I'd had in ages. As they approached, I let the wolf take over again, and instinct became my senses. With each movement in the corn crop, I responded accordingly. Cold steel flashed in the midnight moon, and blood coated the ground. I smiled and bared my teeth, striking down every ghoul within a meter radius. I growled, and it sounded so unlike me, like an animal, but I loved it. My eyes found my next target, and I struck hard and fast. With one strike of my blade, and his arm was removed from his meat sack of a body, I punched him in the head, spinning him like a top and sending him sprawling away. A woman attacked next, trying to claw at my body. I broke her grip with a mere strike to her chin. I grabbed her shriveled body and threw it across the field, knocking it into other corpses as it fell. My strength, my speed, they were superior to anything I'd felt before. Had this new change that had come over me increased my power physically? Of course it had. I wasn't human. Despite my efforts to overcome these beasts, they did keep coming. It was getting annoying how persistent they were. Even the ones that I struck down were starting to get back up. I knew I could last an hour or so more, but if this kept up, I would eventually be overrun by them. I lowered my stance, ready to fight all the harder. 2 charged, and I kicked both back in the same motion so I could turn and plunge my knife into the head of the one coming at me from the left. "You're all starting to annoy me," I snarled, "but fine. Just keep coming, and I'll keep killing you bastards as many times as it takes." Suddenly, a few of the ghouls stopped moving and stood still. I glared at them, wondering what was happening, until their bodies started to deteriorate. They were turning to dust before my very eyes. I stood up to see that all the ghouls were following suit, collapsing into piles of ash and dust. I lowered my knife and watched them all finally feeling at ease. The wolf in me seemed to have calmed a great deal, and yet I still felt its power, the feelings, the instincts. I still had them. I could even smell the two new forms approaching, one tall, strong, and cunning, the other small and innocent. I could almost feel their intentions. At long last, out of the cornstalks and bushes came Joshua holding little Kirai's hand. He looked around at the decaying corpses and the ashes and dirt flying away into the breeze, and then his eyes fell on me. They widened, and then he smirked. "Wow. You know, I knew you might gain some strength from the full moon, but I did not expect this," he chuckled. I raised an eyebrow and looked down at my hands. They were bloody from the battle, but otherwise they seemed normal. I didn't feel any different. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My voice still sounded a bit like a growl. Kirai fished her backpack and pulled out a handheld mirror and gave it to me. I picked it up and looked at myself carefully. And now I understood what Joshua meant. While I looked normal and like myself, there were slight changes. My eyes were now a very sharp and almost beast-like bluish-green color, and they were far more focused than before. My teeth were slightly sharper, and I could see my canines dipping from my lips. I just stared at myself, and then I noticed my hair, which I'd been worried about earlier as looking unkempt, but now it looked so much longer and thick and wild, and yet I just didn't care. "How did that happen?" I asked.
"Well, you're a night angel, Rebecca," Joshua explained. "As such, you have the blood of a monster within you, the blood of a werewolf, and this allows you access to the werewolf's power, the cunning, the instincts, and destructive capabilities. But it also seems to have another effect on you when you look upon a full moon."
"Well, no kidding, but why?"
"Well, my father had a theory that stated werewolves had some kind of wolf spirit within them, and when the full moon rises, that wolf spirit's awaken and allows them to run wild. With you, though, seeing as you're not truly a werewolf, you might have a bit of that wolf spirit, but it doesn't take you over, more of just grants you a bit of its strength."
"That all seems a bit far-fetched," I muttered.
"Maybe it is. Like I said, it's only a theory. Regardless, let's get out of here."
I cleaned off my knife and sheathed it. "Why are we leaving?"
"The totem or spiritual connection that was keeping the ghouls alive was the house itself. I just set fire to it, so soon the fire department will be coming to put it out."
I glanced in the direction of the barn house to see a glow in the distance. How had I missed that? The flames seemed to dance above the roof of the house, celebrating the end of a long and meaningless curse. "Joshua, can we get ice cream?" Kirai asked as leading her out of the cornfield.
"I think we can try, if there's one open, but only if you behave yourself," Joshua laughed.
While the two walked out of the cornfield, I felt something stir in me. A desire for more. A desire to fight. From the moment he'd shown up, I had this urge to attack Joshua. Joshua was powerful, strong. I could sense his power, and for some reason I wanted to pit myself against it. Why did I suddenly have this urge for combat? I ran up behind him, intent on getting the edge of this, but Joshua spun around just in time.
"Rebecca?"
he asked, shock in his voice. I stopped too, and a grin spread across my face. "Hey, Joshua, think we could go around?" Joshua blinked and looked down at Kirai, who looked concerned. "Rebecca, what's wrong?" Kirai asked. "Joshua will get you an ice cream, too." "It's not about that, Kirai. I kind of just want to go around with Joshua, please." I snarled, my voice getting low and rough again. That inner energy, the confidence and the lust for battle was starting to take me again.
"You want to fight me?" he asked.
Yeah, just real quick," I shouted excitedly. I just want to, I want to see how good you are." Joshua's eyes narrowed and he let go of Kirai's hand.
"I see. Seems this change you've gone through doesn't mean that you've just heightened your senses. It heightens aggression."
I was barely listening to what he said. I heard him, certainly, but I was not in the mood to care. Every part of me wanted to fight, to draw his blood, to dominate. "Let's go!" I charged him. Some small voice in my head told me to stop, to hold off, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't control myself. I wanted so badly to take him on. I had to knock him flat on his ass. Joshua shoved Kirai out of the way and knocked my fist aside. Like before, my instincts took hold of me. I was ready for this. Every sensation, every one of my senses was twice as strong. No, 8 times. I could do this. I could destroy him. I swung a kick at his head, and he dodged it. I knew he would. I leapt up and shot my other leg into his chest. He took it with a grunt and fell back. It was my chance. I'd end this. I ran at him with full force and prepared to slam him to the ground. I stopped, a sudden, tremendous pain in my gut, as I saw Joshua's leg had shot clean into my stomach. He'd kicked me. How? I hadn't seen him do it, and I didn't even realize he'd move. He outwitted my senses? You're blinded, he growled. Your wolf instincts are so busy focusing on the attack that you weren't thinking about the counterattack. Shut up, I barked, leaping back for a distance and then charging again. Before I reached him, Joshua moved at me and struck my chest and then my stomach. With one more motion, he kicked my leg out from under me and I crashed to the ground. I gasped in pain as my head struck the earth and I clenched my throbbing temples. Rebecca, he growled, calm down and look into my eyes. I glanced up and our eyes locked. What was I thinking? Where was I? Who was I? What was going on? It was like my mind was one big blank slate. I had no memory of who or what I was. I didn't even care that much. I just felt peace. No fear, no anger, just peace.
Relax, Rebecca.
Rebecca? All right, that was my name. And relax? Sure, no problem there. I was so calm and relaxed already, no order was needed.
Everything is okay, Rebecca.
Yeah, everything's okay.
I'm going to let you up now, and you're going to remain calm.
Sure. Right. I'll remain calm. What the... I felt myself jolt back into reality. Joshua was standing up and brushing himself off. What had he done to me? Why had I felt that way for just an instant?
Feel better now? He asked.
Surprisingly, yes. I could feel that energy churning inside me, but it seemed more distant now. Like it had been put on a leash or something. All it could do was howl and bark, but it wasn't going to come out again. How did you do that? What did you even do?
The power of suggestion. Vampires can hypnotize others with their glares. I was just trying to calm you down.
Right. Your mom was a vampire, so you can... Right. You have some of those powers too, I guess.
Yeah. Well, glad you've calmed down. That full moon power of yours is impressive. And it might be one of your best trump cards. But right now we need to learn how to keep it a bit more under control. We also need to learn how to get around that aggressive nature it gives you.
I nodded as he spoke, still lost in what kind of power I'd tapped into. Joshua?
Kirai spoke up.
Can we get ice cream now?
Right. Come on, we're getting ice cream.
But what about...
Listen, don't work yourself up over this. We still have plenty of time to get you trained up into a proper night angel, Joshua laughed. Come on, or you're not getting any.
I stood stock still for a moment, comprehending all that had happened in the past few minutes. Joshua had powers he had yet to reveal to me. Powers I had no idea were possible, and then there was the whole wolf spirit thing. Was I really so hostile like this? Would I be a threat to others? Was I no different from a normal werewolf? So many fears and suspicions clouded my judgment and my thoughts. I wasn't sure what to think.
Are you coming? Joshua shouted.
Yeah, hold on. I took off for the car to get ice cream, though my mind remained there, in that cornfield, under the large and haunting moon.
Want to get a drink real quick? Better. Chapter 19.
So, how long have you known that you were a night angel? I asked. Did your father tell you? Joshua and I were sitting in an ice cream shop in a booth next to the window. The booth was made for 6, and Kirai sat with Joshua on one side and I sat on the other. The booth stood near a large window that looked out at the dark night beyond. Clouds were rolling over the moon, making it shine much bleaker and blurry. The light of the parlor was bright, though, and it almost hurt my eyes after being out in the dark all night. I'd ordered a small bowl of chocolate ice cream, but I was hardly touching it. Kirai, on the other hand, was eating hers happily and hungrily.
You didn't have to tell me, Joshua stated darkly. From the time I was a kid, I knew I was different from him and from everyone else. I was faster and stronger than the other kids my age. I had keen eyesight and senses at night, and I sunburned so easily that I had to put sunscreen on for long walks outside in the summer. Soon my mom and dad sat me down and explained it all to me, but I knew. I think I always knew I was a night angel, I just didn't have a word for it until then. I listened intently to his story. The moon was still high in the sky, and I still felt that urge to fight, but I was restraining it now. I was able to hold back my savage urges. Why didn't my father tell me what I was?
He didn't know you were a night angel, and even worse, he feared that it meant if you were one, I think he wanted to assume you were normal, until he had no choice but to accept that truth.
That's careless. I wish he'd just told me.
No point crying over it now, Rebecca. It is what it is, and it's time for you to understand how to use your power if we want a chance of beating Set.
I paused and crossed my arms, leaning back, ready to ask a huge question that had plagued in the back of my mind for a while. Who exactly is Set? I asked.
I told you, Joshua answered. Set is a powerful spirit, considered a deity of destruction to the ancient civilizations.
Tell me more about him. Do you know of any way to kill him? You spoke of him as if he'd been here before, or as if you knew something about him.
Joshua didn't answer at first, but merely stared out the window at the night sky.
Look, Joshua, if I'm gonna fight him, I need to know everything. Didn't you yourself say that you need information to properly prepare yourself for...
I've never met Set before, Josh interrupted. But I know what he's capable of and what he might be doing.
I felt a wave of discomfort wash over me, and I gulped, not sure if I wanted to know any more. No, I had to hear this. Tell me, what does Set want? What's his plan?
I think, or I fear, rather, that he wants to resurrect Echidna.
Kirai looked up at Joshua with a smile, ice cream on her lips. Joshua sighed and took a napkin, cleaning off her cheeks and lips as I stared in confusion. Echidna? Who is Echidna? Why would Set return to the realm of the living just to bring this person back? Hold on a sec. Why? Who?
How much do you know about Greek mythology? Echidna was the mother of all monsters in Greece. She mated with the fearsome beast Typhon, and she gave birth to some of the world's most fearsome beasts. Cerberus, the Hydra, the Chimera, the Sphinx, the Nemean Lion, Ladon the Dragon, and many more. Her number of offspring were countless, and all more fearsome than the last. There are some monsters today that are believed to be descendants of her offspring. I came across one not too long ago who claimed that her mother was going to return.
But that can't be true.
Keep your voice down, Joshua snapped. I lowered my voice, but I remained just as urgent.
There's no way a being like that could be real. It's all made up to explain the existence of some monsters.
Yes, and gods of chaos and destruction don't exist either, right? Don't be so naive, Rebecca. You're a night angel. The existence of Echidna shouldn't be too far-fetched to consider the things we've seen.
You claim you came across one of Echidna's children?
A Gorgon by the name of Euryale, named after one of the three sisters, no doubt.
Gorgons were produced by her too?
It's a likely theory. Euryale seemed to think so.
And you can trust her word on this? The snake hair lady was really nice. Kirai perked up, having been listening.
She sucked on her spoon happily, and Joshua smiled. Yeah. Euryale had no reason to lie to us. She was on the run, fleeing her other sisters, as well as the prospect of her mother's arrival. She didn't say how her mother was coming back, but she seemed certain there was a powerful force that was attempting to go through with it. Now that Set has suddenly appeared, I believe he is the one planning to do it.
But why? I demanded. That's the part I don't understand. Why would Set do that?
Why? Why is a question that should never be asked when it comes to Set. He has no reason behind his actions. He does what he does because it amuses him, because it pleases him. He likely would revive Echidna for his own gain, perhaps to create a stir in the monster world.
Rebecca, your ice cream is melting,
Kirai spoke up. I looked down and smiled at her, taking a spoonful and eating the ice cream quickly. Kirai smiled and pushed her bowl aside and leaning forward, playing with the spoon. I know very little about Set, Joshua continued.
Do you know how to kill him?
There are rumors on how to kill demigods and deities like him, but none are proven, and all are rumors only. Some say that stabbing their heart with a blessed blade will work.
A blessed blade? That's easy to get hold of. Just find a sword, get a priest to bless it, and we run the bastard through.
If it were that easy, then he wouldn't need such a threat, would he? No. It can't be that simple. But there might be something. He reached into his bag and yanked out a small black book and opened it. It was full of scribbles, cut out sections of newspapers, and other things that made it look jumbled and odd. He searched through it and found a picture and smiled. This right here. This might be the key to killing Set.
Well, what is it? I asked cautiously.
He turned the book and pushed it towards me so I could see. It was a picture of an article, and there was a samurai sword on it.
And what's that supposed to be?
The Honjo Masamune.
I don't follow. A samurai sword?
Long ago in ancient Japan, there were two famous swordsmiths, Masamune and Muramasa.
Both were incredibly skilled swordsmiths, but Muramasa was savage and bloodthirsty. The two decided to have a contest to see who made the better blade. They both made their finest swords and took them to a river. They placed their swords in the stream with the blades facing against the current, and they watched. And what's your point? Shut up, I'm getting to that. Listen, Muramasa's sword cut everything that came near it. Fish, leaves, stones, frogs, even the air was cut and destroyed by Muramasa's blade. But Masamune's sword didn't cut anything. The fish that swam too close passed by unharmed, the leaves just flew along its blade, and the air hissed as it was undamaged by the blade. And when the two were done, Muramasa thought that he had won the competition, that his blade was superior because of all that it cut. Sounds like it was. What blade doesn't cut anything? Would you shut up and let me finish? Okay, sorry. Anyway, a monk was watching their competition, and he stopped them to tell them the truth. He said that both swords were well made, but Muramasa's was deemed evil. It cut indiscriminately and destroyed all it touched. So Muramasa's blades were all cursed. Anyone who took up a Muramasa blade would become bloodthirsty and would kill others or cut themselves in order to satisfy the blade's hunger for blood. All who pick up a Muramasa blade now after that become master swordsmen, but become murderers or take their own lives, Joshua explained. But the monk said that Masamune, his blades, were special. His cut only that which were evil and unjust in the world, and spared everything else. And to prove it, the monk took the blade of Masamune and cut the Muramasa blade in half with it. Joshua finished. Rebecca, Masamune's sword could destroy evil. It could destroy evil. It could destroy Set. I stared at him skeptically and shook his head. Cute fairy tale, but there's no chance that one of his swords really exists today, and even if it does, it's probably dull now. Not this one, Joshua said, proudly pointing to the picture. The Honjo Masamune is one of the last known swords created by him. It went missing something after World War II, when a U.S. Army soldier took it back to the United States as a souvenir. The U.S. Army officer's name does not exist in the records of history, though, so it's likely a made-up name. No one's been able to locate it. Okay, then we're screwed. If the sword's missing, what's the point? I may have a way to find it, Joshua winked. I have a friend, a fellow monster hunter, who specializes in mythical and legendary artifacts. He used to say he knew something about the Masamune. I say we find him and talk to him. Even if he doesn't know where exactly it is, he might be able to tell us more about it and how it can kill Set. Well, he's not far, is he? He lives in Missouri. It's a bit of a drive, but we'll get there in a day or two, or... well, maybe there's another way. Well, regardless, it's our best lead, Rebecca. The sword that cuts evil. A holy sword, I whispered in awe. Could such a sword really exist? Can it kill Set? It's our only chance right now. Any other ideas I can think of would just take too long, Joshua said, wrapping his arm around Kirai. Too long? Wait, are you saying there's a time limit? Not one set in stone, no, but if he intends to awaken Echidna, he needs the blood of her kin. Fortunately, it'll take him time to find any remaining children of Echidna, but if he does, and I'm sure he will, then his plan will be set in motion. And there's no telling what kind of hell he has planned. I leaned back in my booth to take in this new information, to fully appreciate our dire situation. Set, the spirit and deity of chaos and destruction, was planning to revive the ancient Greek mother of monsters. To do this, she needed to find the blood of Echidna's children. And our only way to stop him was to find a legendary sword that had been lost and, for all we know, could be worthless as of now. It seemed so hopeless. We were grasping at straws now, and Joshua knew it, and yet he stayed calm. He simply stroked Kirai's hair as he smiled and leaned into him. I know you're worried, Rebecca, Joshua whispered. Oh, is it that obvious? Your dad is a pastor. He ever read you the story of Esther before? Yeah, I've heard it before. It's a favorite of mine. Because do you really think Esther, a random Hebrew girl, just happened to become queen at the time of that crisis? Of course not. It was God's plan. Exactly. And I think we've been through here for a reason as well. Kirai yawned again and began to hobble. You think so? I do, Joshua nodded. Let's keep going one step at a time. We'll find the Honjo Masamune. We'll beat Set. We'll save the world. I just know it. I'm convinced that you discovered you were a night angel and were brought here for such a time as this. Well, I wish I had your confidence. It's not really confidence. More of faith. Chapter 20.
I sat in the hotel room. The sun was now high in the sky, and as such, Kira was fast asleep in the dark room. How awful it must be to be confined to the darkness like that. It seemed like more of a curse than anything. Perhaps that was what made the Night Angel so superior to these creatures. They were able to exist beyond the world of darkness, which gave them the edge of the monsters didn't share. Joshua had been gone for quite a while, and I had no idea where he was. After their ice cream stop, he had dropped them off at the hotel and went back to his car, saying he needed to make a call. Why he couldn't make it on his cell phone, I didn't know, but I was beyond asking him questions right now. Joshua was a real mystery to me at times. He was an amazing fighter from what I'd seen, and he seemed more than intent on destroying the threat of Set and his evil, and yet I got the feeling he was withholding something from me. Was he still holding out information? Where the hell are you, Joshua? Missing the murder-in-chief, are you? I spun around in shock at the voice to see a familiar face. He was just as short, green, and ugly as I remembered. His sharp little teeth were tightened into a grin, and his beady little eyes seemed more than a little pleased with seeing me in distress. Though he may not be the evil mastermind here, there was no way I could bring myself to trust this little leprechaun bastard. What the hell are you doing here, Morgan? You remember my name? You flatter me, lass. With all the things you've been doing lately, I would have thought you'd forget us mere mortals. I'll flatten you if you don't tell me why you're here, I snapped back. Morgan cackled and leapt up, landing on the bed, reclining as if livid there. Just coming to catch up with you, lass. Been quite a while since we last spoke, hasn't it? Now, why don't I believe that? I scoffed. Morgan shrugged, but never once lost that arrogant smirk. It made me want to punch it clean off his face. Like I told you before, lass. You can believe whatever you want, but the fact is I'm here, and that should be enough for you. I rolled my eyes. Let's not talk about me, though. Let's talk about you. Or maybe Joshua? What do you know that I could possibly want? I growled. I know that Joshua has friends in dark places. And this won't be the first instance where he's crossed a deity. The room went cold for a moment. I wasn't sure what to say or how to respond to that statement. Now that I thought about it, Joshua did seem to know a fair bit about Set and his nature. Could that be because he was familiar with another deity? Did he know something about killing or fighting deities that he wasn't sharing? What kind of friends? Oh, I shan't say that, lass. That'd be telling. Did you just come here to harass me? Either tell me what you want to tell me or get out of here before I put a few rounds in your head. You know that won't work on me. Maybe I'll do it for fun, I threatened. The leprechaun laughed his high cackle and sat up. I like you, lass. I can't really explain it, but I'll tell you that you've really got me interested. And that's why I'm here. To help me. To help myself, Morgan chuckled. To be honest, whether you live or die makes little difference to me. All that matters is that I stay entertained. You're a bastard. So I've been told, Morgan laughed. Anyway, I'll ask your friend Joshua about this deity if you like. He's familiar with her. She might be able to help you locate Set. You sure about that? Deities have always had a habit of keeping tabs on each other. They're the jealous type, you know. They don't like it when another one gets invasive on their turf. Are deities really gods? You know, like creators of the world and stuff? Ha! They think they are. And so does everyone who worships them. Deities have the superiority complex that alone could be considered its own deity, but no. No, in truth, they're just yet another part of creation. A house of cosmic beings who want to rule whatever they can get their hands on. Yet I feel like there's a lot more than that, I sighed. If we had all the answers to their existence and power, they wouldn't have reached a title like deity, now would they? Morgan pointed out. He then climbed off the bed and stretched. I suppose I best get going now. You still haven't told me anything useful. Just ask the Night Angel about his deity friend. He'll put the pieces together for you, Morgan instructed. When he then turned on his little green heels and walked towards the door, I turned away from him, listening to the door opening and slamming shut. I still had the feeling he was there, though, watching me. How much did Morgan really know? How was he aware of these things? There was more to Morgan than met the eye, and next time I got the chance, I'd ask him about it. After an hour, the door finally opened again, and I looked from my bed to see Joshua walking in. He kicked off his boots and fell into the bed next to mine, sighing long and loudly. I glanced at him surprisingly. Morgan's accusation still ringing in my ears, but how do I bring up the deity friend of his? All right, I got good news and bad news, Joshua announced. The good news is I got in touch with my archaeology buddy, and he says he may have a lead on the Honjo Masamune. Great, but what's the bad news? The bad news is he says we got to meet him in person to discuss it, because there's a catch. There's always a catch. And with this guy, the catch could be anything, Joshua snarled. Look, I love him. He's a great friend and a good archaeologist, but that bastard's as greedy as King Midas. Wasn't he that Greek guy that could turn anything into gold? Yeah, that's probably what he wants me to get for him, the Hand of Midas. Wait, there's a legit Hand of Midas? Supposedly Midas grew to hate his curse so greatly that he cut off his own hand in an attempt to rid himself of the curse, and legend says his hand will still turn anything it touches to gold. It's no big deal. Just another legend he's chasing after, but no one knows where the hand is. Look, we're getting off topic. We need to move tonight if we're going to get to my buddy in time. Don't you think we should find out more about what Set wants? Maybe we can figure out where he is. I'd love to know those things too, but unless you could capture a high-ranking vampire who knows about Set or perhaps interrogate the deity himself, we can't do anything, Joshua explained, exasperated. Don't you have a friend who's a deity? Joshua suddenly froze and sat up looking at me in shock. His eyes narrowed and I quickly realized it overstepped my bounds. How did you know that? He demanded. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to argue back. I didn't think it was important. I never considered it. Seems we both keep secrets then, don't we? I growled. Joshua snarled and rolled up onto his rear end so he was glaring at me. The fate of the world is at stake. You can't afford to keep secrets from me. But it's okay for you to do it, I barked back. We both glared at each other, and I could tell he wanted nothing more than to scream at me, but he slowly eased back and calmed himself down. All right. Okay. Let's chill, he said. You're right. I didn't tell you about Asaka. I was worried that if you knew I had a deity as an ally since we were hunting one, you'd think I had a conflict of interests. Well, damn, I don't have any idea why I'd think that, I grumbled sarcastically. She's not like Set. Asaka is a Hindu goddess, not even in the same grouping as Set. She's the mortal avatar of the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, fortune, and prosperity, Joshua explained. She and my father were old friends, and she's been financially sustaining me as well. How? Well, she is a goddess of wealth and prosperity, Joshua chuckled. No, why were your father and her friends? She's a deity after all. Don't all hunters kill monsters and stuff? My dad was different than other hunters. Why do you think he married a vampire? He explained and believed that monsters are what we make them to be, not a necessary thing you're born with. He preferred to see the brighter side of every creature, and if he couldn't find it, then he'd kill it. Asaka, or Lakshmi, whichever you want to call her, was in a bit of a pickle when Dad gave her a hand with the issue. Henceforth, she's been a friend to Dad, and now she might be able to help us again. Okay, is she close by? I asked. No. But I can call her here, Joshua said with a smirk. If I still remember her mantra, I should be able to bring her here no problem. Well, perfect. Then we can get her to tell us what she knows about Set. Okay, but now that I've been so honest with you, it's your turn. How do you know about her? Joshua asked. Don't lie, Rebecca. I was honest with you. Now it's your turn. I stared at him for a long moment, and I could feel my heart beating faster. Would he use his vampire stare on me? No, not this time. He wanted to trust me, and I wanted to trust him. This was his way of making things right between us. I'd be a real bitch if I didn't come through honestly now. He did tell me the truth after all. How do you capture or kill a leprechaun? I asked. What? What does that have to do with anything? Just tell me, I muttered. He groaned and leaned against the wall. Well, I've only ever killed one, and that was years ago with Dad's help. They're tricky little creatures with a lust for mischief, but they do have weaknesses. 4-leaf clovers ward them off, and solid gold will burn their skin. The myth about leprechauns keeping gold is half true. They love gold, but they can't touch it. No hunter's really sure why. Maybe it's because the value of gold draws them to it. Okay, well, a leprechaun told me. His name is Morgan. Joshua stared at me as if I was insane, but then he stood up and walked around the room. Was he here? Yeah, a few hours ago. Where was he standing? Joshua asked. I pointed to my bed and he ran to it, lifting up the sheets and staring. He kept lifting mattresses and checking the floor. What, you don't believe me? There was no leprechaun here, Joshua hissed. Leprechauns leave behind a very putrid odor wherever they go, and I don't smell it anywhere. What are you talking about? It was Morgan. It had to be him. He was small and green. He was a real piece of trash, and he's always pulling that some weird stupid joke on me, like how he started out by talking that lame-ass fake Irish accent, and he did what? Joshua spun around and glared at me furiously, his eyes nearly bulging out of his head. He spoke in an Irish accent. Rebecca, leprechauns hate the Irish stereotype view of themselves. One would never try to fake an Irish accent to keep that stereotype. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't a leprechaun. He said he was doing that accent for fun. Unless they're actually from Ireland, no leprechaun would ever try to joke about that stereotype. They hate it. How many times have you met Morgan? 3, I think, I exclaimed, getting more and more frightened as Joshua went on. Did he ever speak in an Irish accent any of those other times? Occasionally, I think.
This creature. Pretending to be a leprechaun, but there's no way it was one.
But what could it be?
Set. He's been watching us. That bastard knows where we are.
All right. I know that the title said we'd read chapter 20. Let me see if I've gotten the message. All right. I just got the message from my brother. So we are going to be ending it here, guys. I'm glad that we managed to get to chapter 20. What a cliffhanger, am I right? All right, guys. Well, let me know in the comments section what you guys think. I would love to hear your thoughts on chapters 11 through 20. This was a fun night. I'm sorry we didn't have as many people as I would have liked. But hey, it's reading streams. I don't get as many viewers as I'd like for these. It's a real shame, but you know what? It's all cool. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream tonight. Tell me what you think of Rebecca, what you think of Joshua, what you think of the twists and turns in this story so far. Like I said, it's not my best. It's not my best. Is Morgan evil? They just said Joshua just revealed that Morgan is actually set in disguise. It's been set this whole time. Like Morgan was, what he revealed was that Morgan isn't actually a leprechaun. He was just pretending to be one, and when asking who he was, it was revealed that it's set in disguise. Anyway, tomorrow is my brother's stream, if he's up for it, and I hope you guys are excited for it. Anyway, I will see you in my next video. Take care.